I'm going to make my random challenges videos from now on. Hopefully you'll learn a little bit more about how I process my images. So I'm in my Lightroom library. I'm going over here to the slider. I'm going to close my eyes. I'm going to move the slider up and down, stop somewhere. Alright, we're in Tibet. And I'm going to pick one of these images and process them. And as you can see, all these images are keyworded, but I haven't actually one looks like it's been cropped a little bit, but I really haven't done any processing to these images. So I'm going to pick one that looks like it could be good and work on it here for you. So trying to see what would be a good challenge here. Actually, we're going to go, let's see what this looks like. Alright, yeah, this will be a good challenge. So first thing I want to do is do as much of the work as I can to the raw file here in Lightroom. And one way that I like to process my raw files is to convert them to grayscale. So I'm going to hit the V key in Lightroom and turn that to grayscale. And look at this image as a black and white. And I'd like to see more information here on the guy's face. So I'm going to go to the Develop module. And I'm going to add a little bit of fill light to bring out detail on the main dancer's face. The highlights are a little blown, maybe a bit there now, so I'll try to bring in a little bit of that with the recovery slider. I've got clarity already added for mid-tone contrast from my default setup with this particular camera. Looking at it, I can't really see a whole lot more that I want to do. I'm going to add a little bit of contrast and see what happens. Nah, the face gets a little too dark, so I'm going to come back down on that. And now I'm going to turn it back to color and look at the colors, and they're pretty saturated, but that's the way color is in Tibet. And that looks pretty good. So I think as the raw file, I've done pretty much as I can to it. So I'm going to now bring this into Photoshop. So I'm on a Mac, I'm just going to hit Command E. On a PC, hit Control E. Excuse me, and bring this into Photoshop. And the one thing I don't like about this image at all is the distracting background that we have going on with that person back there. So I want to eliminate that distraction. So I'm going to do that by duplicating this layer. And then what I want to do is blur this layer, the background one. So I'm going to click, turn this one off, highlight that one, double click to change its name so I can work on it. I'm going to blur this. Enough so that the person in the background doesn't become a distraction any longer, and I think that about does it here. And say OK. Turn this one back on, add a layer mask to the top copy, take my brush, paint with black, so make my brush a little bit bigger here. I'm using a Wacom tablet, so I can just move the slider to make the brush bigger. You can use your bracket keys if you want to make the brush bigger. I want to have a low flow and a high opacity when I paint with black on the layer mask. And I'm going to start painting in for the blur. And I'll actually move my flow up a little bit so this goes faster. Blow it up a little bit, come in tighter. Paint my blur around the edge of the hat. And I'm just going to work around these details here. And I guess since that part of the background's blurred, this needs to be as well to look consistent. And I want to eliminate that line here, so I have to paint in a little bit to the edge of the costume he's wearing. And let's take a look. So here was the one I blurred. Here's the image. After that, if I hide the mask, here's what it looks like when it was sharper. Here's adding that blur to it. And actually, I'm going to go back to this one. And besides just the Gaussian blur, I'm going to try to add a little bit of motion blur. To the image with a little bit of streaking. And come back up. And it looks like I need to paint a little bit more on the mask here and darken that in. Turn my flow up so it just goes faster. So I can see on the mask this area is filling in with black. There we go. And then I think it just looks a little bit flat, could use a little bit of a contrast boost. So I'm going to go up here to curves. I'm going to put on a strong curve, go back down here, lower the opacity of that curve, and just dial it up a little bit. Actually, what I think I want to do, instead of doing it that way, turn this up. Well, lower the opacity overall. I just want to add the contrast to the main dancer and not to the rest of the scene. So I'm going to fill this mask with black. I'm going to invert it. And I'm going to paint with white. And just paint my contrast in. Whoops, with white. So I have to switch my color here. I was painting with black, so that did nothing. Now I can paint in my contrast. And we'll turn that up a little bit and make this go a little faster. Mostly in the face area up here is where I want to draw the attention. So the contrast did that to the image. And I may want to lighten his face a little bit more. So I'm going to add another curve and just lighten up the face like that. So I want to fill this one with black again. I'm going to invert the mask and take my brush and paint a little bit there. So those two layers, let's see, I'll turn them off this way. So here's the contrast, here's the lightening of the face. If I click on this image and hide the mask, there's the original, and here's what I ended up with. So last thing I like to do is add a little vignette to my images so that your eye is drawn more to the center. So I'm going to make another adjustment layer at the top. I'm going to turn this one to multiply to darken the image by one stop. Fill this mask with black. Again, I'm just going to invert it. I'm going to take my brush, and I have a big soft brush at a low flow, and I'm going to darken this edge. Computer seems to be running a little bit slower today, but I'm also using a 900 pixel brush, so it takes it a while to paint. Darken that edge, and I'm going to come down and darken those corners as well. So now I need to go back and label my layers so I know what they do. So I'm going to double click on my curves and call this one contrast. I'm going to call this one brighten face. And I'm going to call this one edge burn. And the edge burn added this to the image. And there you go. That's about all I would do to this image. So that's my random challenge for today. So if you enjoyed today's random challenge and you think you want to learn some more information from me, I just want to point out you can go to my website, which is just lewiskemper.com. And if you go to Finding Lewis, I have a whole calendar of all the speaking engagements and classes that I'll be doing throughout the year. Most of the speaking engagements are free, so you can see if I'm coming to talk in an area near you. Or you can go over here under Training, and I have my Lightroom training DVDs for sale. I also have a whole series of Photoshop training DVDs available. If you are interested in buying one of the DVDs, if you, in the coupon code box on the checkout of the website, if you enter DVD 2011 in the coupon code, that'll get you a discount. It's good up until the end of the year. And if you're interested in something more personal, I also have my one-on-one training, my digital house calls, where I can give you a lesson basically anywhere in the world through the technology of screen sharing, and it'd be a one-on-one lesson covering whatever you want. So you could even, take a lesson in your pajamas. I'd never know, but you could have a private lesson. So that's all I wanted to share with you, and that's today's random challenge.